Hello, I'm making a video with the baby dog. And I took a photo, I took several photos of the roses, yes, the roses are blooming. Oh my goodness, then baby has to get up for that. The roses are blooming, oh my goodness. The roses are blooming. Oh my goodness. The roses, yes, there are roses. But when I say the rat is there, is there a rat there? There is a rat. There's a rat, yeah. That causes more of an action potential. When I say the rat is there, is the rat there? Is the rat hiding there in a tree? Yeah, there is a rat in the tree. There's a rat in the tree. Is there? Yes, there is a rat in the tree. There is a big rat in the tree. In the rhododendron tree, yes. Oh yeah, there is one. Oh yeah. Yes, I love you infinitely much. So, I'm making a video today for a beautiful soul. His name is Nowak from England. Here's the story for those people that haven't heard about it yet. It was in December when that happened. A young man, just barely 18 years old in England, walks down the street and walks past a brother and two brothers from India that are also young. I don't know, in their 20s or something. And he just walks past them, or he thinks he's just walking past them, right? He doesn't say anything to them. Just, big city, people don't even look at each other. They're too afraid. So he just walks past them, and one of the Indian guys pulls out a large knife and stabs this young man, Nowak, a white man, stabs him into the side, into the ribs, and all the way into the body. Nowak collapses right there on the street, but manages to pull out his mobile phone and calls 911. He says, "I have been stabbed. I need medical attention." While he's on the phone picks up the conversations between the two brothers, where the other brother, that the one that did not stab him, the other brother said to his brother that stabbed him, he said to him, "Just tell the police that he insulted you and called you racial things, okay, something racist." When in fact Nowak never even said anything to them. He just minded his own business. Now Nowak bleeding out on the sidewalk. When the police arrives, the guy quickly says, "He called me something racial, something racist." And the police officer takes the murderer's side and handcuffs this man that is bleeding out on the cement and makes him roll over and that causes him unimaginable pain, okay? To have to be rolled over on the front and then have the hands put, like, how they twist the arms onto the back and put the handcuffs on, and that caused them unimaginable pain because of that wound in the rib cage. And the police officer, I don't know, one can't see much of the police officer, only the hands, so can't really tell what kind of person that is. But the police officer, he seemed kind of nervous. He kept saying, "It's okay, buddy, it's okay, buddy," but he handcuffs the injured man that is bleeding to death and does nothing to that man from India that stabbed that young man. Okay, so I saw that last night. I usually don't pay attention to these kind of things. It probably has been going on for a while. I saw a post from Elon Musk about this also. I didn't know what this was about until I saw the report by Tucker Carlson. And so that was the first comprehensive report I have seen so far about this that got my attention. And usually I stay away from these negative things because I'm already overloaded with too much pain from what I see when I do animal rights petition signing and I read the story or just capture the story as quickly as possible without causing a nervous breakdown, So, but there are these cruel stories, these stories of extreme injustice I see every day. And so I try to stay away from this stuff. So it's been now half a year that's been going around the internet. And also the video footage from Nowak's mobile phone where he captured these things. And then still nothing was really done. Nothing was done to the murderer. Instead they arrested his mother. I don't know why. But I know why. Because then they can later say, so yeah, the mother didn't even cause any of the injuries, so we let her go. And therefore we let them all go. So that's their logic. It's a corrupt logic, okay? It is the logic of the cartels that are running England, the entire island. Okay, so entire Great Britain is run by the underworld, by the cartels, by organized crime. And they want these people from the equator to come in and bring with them their violent, hostile religions and their hatred towards white people and their violent behavior and all of that. They flee from a country that's violent, but bring with them the violence. So how is that going to make the other country any better then? It doesn't take very long until the other country becomes Iraq or Afghanistan. Okay, so and that's exactly what's happening to Great Britain. It is becoming a Muslim-run country. People don't recognize their neighborhoods anymore. People are afraid to leave their homes. Is that how we should treat people? Do you see that as human rights? I do not. What happened to Nowak is something that happens there all the time, but doesn't even reach the media. Okay, so most of those don't even reach the media. They get caught up right up front, and then the whole situation gets silenced and obscured. Okay, so it just so happened that Nowak was able to, I think, tap into a live stream or something, and that's what everyone should have. We should have a mobile phone that is connected with a live video recording stream on one of the social media websites, okay, either YouTube or X, somewhere where you have a permanent live stream that, if when you're filming something with your device, it automatically live records onto your live stream. That way, the police can't say, give me your camera, we have to delete the footage. So they can't say that anymore because it's already been recorded, it's already live for people to see. So this is a tremendous step towards security. In this case, it didn't help him, but it helps others because it got recorded and other people get to see it. Even though it's negativity, I know how hard all of this is, and I know how people suffer from too much negativity. But if we blindfold ourselves, we're not going to make the situation better. Okay, so we have to look at the situation. We have to be aware of what's going on. We have to pay attention to this situation, and that gives us the background knowledge on what is happening, and that then leads us to say, no more. I'm gonna do whatever I can as an activist, as a civilian, as a citizen on Earth, to do whatever I can to speak out and to bring more awareness to the public and to say to people, don't hold the other cheek anymore. You have to fight for your life. Elon Musk said it very clearly. You have to fight or you die. Okay, that is what it is. In the case of Nowak, he was just 18 years old, and his parents are probably woke. Okay, so I'm not blaming anyone, I'm just pointing out. I'm pointing out the situation so that people become aware and understand that wokeism is not going to save your children. Okay, it just isn't. I'm not calling for a racial divide. That's what the underworld is doing to us. That's why this is happening. Okay, I'm calling to unite, but obviously that's very illusionary to think that we can do it. I'm still calling for uniting and for oneness. Okay, but the situation is very inflamed, and because of this inflammation, this mental inflammation of asylum seekers that are coming from very disturbed, very, very mentally insane countries that have been so broken psychologically also, and this even passes on to their offspring, all of this trauma and the division trauma. They have division among each other in the Middle East and in India. It's incredibly horrific what's happening. The Muslims are storming the peaceful Buddhist monasteries. Buddhist monks told me that in person on YouTube. They cried on my shoulder. They said, we don't know what to do. We are completely helpless. Buddhist monks that are taught to the same, that the Christ message, like hold the other cheek, just do nothing. What would the Buddha do? The Buddha would just sit there and de-escalate the situation and talk peacefully. But these people, they're beyond de-escalation. They are the criminals, the psychopaths. They're beyond any kind of reason and any kind of listening to anyone, no matter how peaceful. These peaceful Buddhist monks have to resort now to radical self-defense. Okay, they have no other choice. What other choice do they have? Okay, it's either defend yourself or die. Okay, so you have to defend yourself. You have to stand up for yourself. You have to also use lethal weapons, okay, to defend yourself. I have talked to the AIs about this in general, about this type of dilemma situation. Here we have someone like me, for example, who grows up in a woke environment, in a woke family. This has been going on for a long time. Trust me, even for the grandmothers, they have already been through this, through the woke ringer. Trust me on this. Every family that considers themselves aristocratic. In Germany, it's a plague. What is happening with that? We are so aristocratic. We always hold the other cheek. Don't judge someone. Doesn't matter if they do genital mutilations on their children. That's their culture. That's what we were told. That's what we were also told in the African anthropology class in Santa Monica College. Okay, I know the professor was woke as hell, and she's never gonna change because she must be in her 80s now, okay, or 90s. So these people are never gonna change. They have been through this their whole lives. It's a lopsided education, and they have never been in that situation, in such a monstrous situation where they actually have to go, maybe I should use lethal force to defend myself, okay? Like Kyle Rittenhouse did, okay? So now the cop that shot, there was a cop in Oregon that shot a naked white man. Now, this cop should go to prison, okay? So, and we don't know what ethnicity the cop was, so if the cop was dark-skinned, who hates white people, then that is the situation. What happens? Okay, same situation again. But in either situation, if you see a naked man, whatever skin color he has, you don't shoot him. Okay, if you are terrified of him, which the cop claims that he was terrified of a naked man who had no weapon on him at all. A naked man who has lost his mind, who had a psychotic breakdown. Okay, I've seen this. I had a boyfriend like that. He wanted to run out the street in the middle of winter in Germany, naked, with his guitar around his chest. That's all he had on him. He wanted to run out there, naked. His mother and his father, they clawed him down and barely protected him from running out there, and restrained him, locked the door. They called my dad. They were in total despair, and because they knew that my dad had more connections, so they said, we are in total despair. We don't know what to do. We don't want to lock him up. We don't want to, but he needs help. So my dad said, yeah, I will call the psychiatrist that I was also seeing and that he knew personally. And he gave her the instructions on how to get there. And so then they came over, they picked me up, and to help them restrain him on the back seat if he becomes crazy again. And he was becoming crazy again. He was saying really crazy stuff, like that was also mixed up with some real vulgar stuff, and just things that made absolutely no sense. It triggered me, made me real mad, but I knew better than to become mad because I knew he was having a psychotic breakdown. So we brought him to the psychiatrist, and it was very difficult to restrain him there. Suddenly he gets up and wraps the flower vase into newspapers. Then he runs out and says, I wish you all a nice plunge, or a nice plunge in the abyss or something like this. We ran after him, restrained him again. I clawed on his sweater. He pulls the sweater over his head. I didn't want to hurt him, so I grabbed onto his sweater, which doesn't help very much. Then he keeps running. Then the staff had to come. Oh, it was awful. And the psychiatrist knew right away what was going on. This is an acute state of inflammation in the brain, basically. He gave him some sedative, just there to calm down a little bit. He gave him the prescription to the hospital, where there's the big rat. He gave him a prescription to be admitted to the hospital, to the psych ward, where his brother had already been and still was at that time. For several years, his brother was already there. His brother also suffered from psychotic breakdowns. So I met his brother 2 times actually, and I saw how extremely frail and frightened the brother was. So any wrong word, if I say something, if I talk about werewolves or something, he would freak out and run into the forest. So where the werewolves are, So it's that kind of stuff. And so then we brought him to the hospital, and I visited him there several times because I loved him, I cared about him, and this was all very painful. But I was really relieved that he was behind closed doors and couldn't come out there to hurt anyone. The last night he had spent at my place, he suddenly got up and hammered his fist onto a box of jewelry that I had there. And he said he had to do that because his whole life was in that box of jewelry. And I asked him, please, I pleaded with him, I prayed to him, and I said, please don't hurt me physically. And he said, no, I won't. Then he couldn't sleep. You can't sleep in a state like that. The next morning, I couldn't sleep. My brother couldn't sleep in the next room. My brother was sitting upright in his bed. Next day, my parents are in the kitchen eating breakfast. Norbert goes into the kitchen with that jar of jewelry that I had. He opens the jar, shows them the stuff that's in their earrings, different necklaces and stuff, and perfume bottles. And he says, my whole life is in this box, and I'm going to put the lid on it now. And here my dad, who knows nothing, obviously, about psychiatric evaluations, about all of these psychiatric disorders that are out there, and the warning, all these warning signs and the characteristics of it. So my dad, what does he do? He smiles and says, oh, that's very poetic. But it actually was good in that moment because it de-escalated the situation. So it praised him. It gave Norbert a little bit recognition and praise. So even though that's not exactly what he needed, because he needed someone to say, what is happening with your whole life that's in that box? What is going on with that? There's an emergency. Tell me about it. Okay, that's how primotherapy would address this, because then he can dive into it and sit and look into it instead of running away with the praise, for example, which is basically an act out, of course. But it can help as a de-escalation tactic. But my dad didn't know about that either. He just finds all of these kind of weird things poetic or artistic or something. So that's how I also grew up, and for me it was actually very good because I was autistic, Asperger's, and extremely weird, and also very mentally broken. but not like Norbert was. I had the dog. The dog saved my life. The dog saved my sanity. My grandfather's Great Dane saved my sanity. I'm sure of that. If I had not had my grandfather's Great Dane, or the horses, my grandfather's large horse, and my mother's 2 Iceland horses later on, and the rabbit. So luckily my whole family is animal lovers and animal friendly, so that saved my sanity. It really did, because that's love. Love is the healing energy, okay? Norbert didn't have that. He didn't have any of that. His parents beat him. They thought that they were helping him to understand something by doing this, which is exactly adverse, okay? It makes children grow up to become completely insane. They can't even trust their parents, okay? If you can't trust anyone, you end up like the Harlow monkey on the ground, biting yourself and tearing your hair out. That happened to me as a little child, because my mother was very, very toxic and mentally ill. So, but the animals saved my life. If I had not had the animals, I would have ended up like Despina. That is a woman I knew in the past in our friend circle, and she was getting in with heroin. I kept my distance because I was terrified of that. I read a very important book, Wir Kinder vom Bahnhof Zoo, which translates to We Children from Bahnhof Zoo. Bahnhof Zoo is the train station in Berlin. And this girl that was in the early 70s, Christiane was her name. She experienced being completely down and out in Berlin and in the drug scene. And when she got sober, her grandmother helped her and social workers helped her to get sober. And she wanted to write a book. They helped her because she was only a couple of years older than us. So she's been through all of this. By the time we were 11, she's been through all of this, got the chance to write the book and warn us kids, us girls particularly, who were just getting into puberty. And when you get into puberty, you get swept up by your hormones, and you want to be liked by everyone. You want social acceptance. You want to fit in. You want to do what they do, and that's very, very dangerous. And Christiane warned us all about this, and because of her book, and I praise her, and I thank her for the rest of my life. I have infinite gratitude to Christiane for writing this book and warning us all about these very, very dangerous hard drugs. So I never got into dangerous hard drugs. I have been on the fringe of these things, but lucky for me, they didn't work. Cocaine didn't work for me, and pot and cannabis and marijuana didn't work for me at all. Okay, none of these things were working for me. It was just making me more crazy. Alcohol was making me into, my brother called me animal. Okay, so the animal is there again. Every time I was drunk, I was completely insane. So I know I have some Mongolian, I have Russian, I have Tundra, that kind of stuff also in me, and they tend to, and those are the ancestors of the Native Americans, and all of those people tend to have problems with alcohol, so they cannot tolerate it at all. They become completely inflamed just from drinking alcohol. Alcohol is a toxic drug, okay? Stay away from it. But everyone was smoking and drinking alcohol, and just the memory of it is, it's just, I just want to puke it out. It's so awful. So I developed an absolute OCD aversion against all of this, which is good because that keeps me far away from that stuff. So, but it took me a long time to phase all of these things out. So because everyone was doing, at least what they would call the mild party stuff, alcohol, cigarettes, that's not mild, okay? It's highly addictive, and it is toxic, and it destroys people's brains and bodies, okay? It's very, very bad for people. So, but later on I realized, because I have a good prefrontal cortex, large forehead, that looks into this and doesn't ignore the warning signs and listens also to what other people have to say. So gradually I got more and more into health, and all of that made me save my life, made me healthy. And also I've always, in Germany, we ate whole grain bread, which was also a lifesaver. If you drink alcohol and smoke and you eat white flour stuff with no nutrients and white sugar, you get much sicker than if you drink alcohol and smoke and eat whole grain bread, right? So that's obvious, pretty obvious. So the health food stuff that Germany had, and I don't know how it is today, with the immigrants coming in, it's probably not as healthy anymore. But it used to be healthy. There was a health food store on every street corner in the past that would sell Rudolf Steiner's cosmetic products and Dr. Hauschka's rose elixir for the brain. And so I did all of these things, All of that saved my life. Rudolf Steiner saved my life, I know that for sure. Classical music saved my life. Mozart, Bach and Beethoven saved my life. It's the truth. I grew up with that, like really actively in school. We were all playing an instrument. I played the violin. It wasn't easy because I had stage fright and stage fright, and it was really bad. But the music still playing it with difficulties and mistakes, it was still very, very healing for me. My mother closed the door. She didn't want, it's all toxic on all of that, but the music still saved my life. Music was still good. So if you have any of that, don't dismiss this. Don't say, oh, my parents don't want to hear it, or oh no, they don't want to hear it, or that's too difficult. No, try it anyway, because it can save your life. It can save your children's life. What I'm saying here is the truth. Okay, so it's all the truth, all of this. So that guy Nowak, he was a student at the university, and he had his whole life ahead of him. Okay, I don't know what his parents were like. I'm guessing they must have been woke, right? They're like 40 or 38 or something, 35 maybe, very young still, and they also grew up with this British wokeness that has been going on for a very long time in Great Britain and whole of Europe. Okay, so except for the former Soviet countries, except for all of the Eastern European countries like Ukraine, Russia, Slovakia, Czechoslovakia, Slovenia, those countries, okay? So Hungary, those countries were part of the Soviet Union when I was growing up, and all the way until 1989, okay, when I did my high school graduation. So that was quite a moment, and things got really bad, out of control then, because the people were not used to that situation of a free country. They thought they were very They were very much babied by the Soviet Union. So anyone who says, so the Soviet Union, it's communism, that's so bad, right? It is so terrible. No, no. It was making geniuses out of people in massive amounts. Okay? So that's a fact. It was a dictatorship, a good one. Yeah, you better believe it. It was an oligarchical dictatorship of a few, the apparatchiks, I don't know, a few 100 people or something that were running things and they were highly intelligent, and they also come from health food, and they knew that they did not want their country to be run over by McDonald's and white flour and white sugar stuff. Okay, so they made their stuff whole food, which had a tremendous effect on how these kids grew up. Okay, and also they didn't have toxic religions. Religion, it wasn't persecuted, but it was not allowed in public offices. It was not given incentives. It wasn't promoted. It was discouraged. So there was no space in schools for religion, for religious BS, okay, for some total bullshit of the Christian religion with all of its like Genesis and all of these total misunderstandings of history. So they didn't want to have anything to do. They didn't want anything to do with any of these things. They wanted to teach science, evolution, Darwin, and with still, not in a closed book, but in a scientific, open-minded approach, where everyone was encouraged to think and put their own mind into it. That's a fact, what I'm saying here. I am from that region. I grew up very close to the Soviet Union, on the other side of the wall, but very close. I had a great-grandmother living on the Soviet Union side, on the German side, but it was that part of Germany was occupied. Eastern Germany was occupied by the Soviet Union. And I saw what happened to her. She used to have a lot of money. She had an amazing house from the 1600s with ornamental stucco and facades, and this incredible sun that was smiling down on people that would come through that enormous door, like a king lived there. The Soviet Union made families move into her house, but her house was kind of like structured like a very large apartment building. She was living on the top 2 floors, so she was allowed to keep those, but the other floors were then had families sent in. That is how the Soviet Union functioned, families that didn't have very good jobs, that worker families. So everyone was supplied with a home. Now, during the Soviet Union, within a country, within the same race, within the same culture, within the same stories and upbringing, is a completely different situation than if you bring people from Muslim countries to Germany and make them move into your house. It's a completely different situation, because the Muslims will kill the original homeowners. Okay. The meek and mild Germans that were sent to my great-grandmother's house were meek and mild. They loved her, they protected her, they would give everything to protect her. They loved that house. They loved their back garden, large back garden, beautiful, with apple trees. And everyone was sitting in that back garden. People would eat together on a large table. It was a community. You can call it a commune, but a good one. It's a good thing. My great-grandmother was very lonely. She needed these young families there. Okay, so very different situation. That's why I do not call what Gavin Newsom and the cartel people, Biden, Harris, and Walz, and Obama, and all of those people, or Angela Merkel is also part of that. That's why I don't call what they're doing communism, because what they're doing is murder. They're very, very well aware that these Muslims are extremely dangerous, and they're sending those people to innocent families and communities to cause unimaginable suffering. Children are being raped, abducted, trafficked, drug abused, pushed, you name it. People are being shot, people are being murdered. Okay, that is murder. That's worse than murder. It's mass murder, what these people are guilty of. Okay, so just I had to fact check here. And Nowak, this young innocent man, had to die to teach the world what is actually happening. So now you know. Okay, I sorted it all out for you now. So watch this video again. Peace and love for all living beings, for all animals and humans and reptiles.